Hello everyone, and welcome to my tutorial on how to get your Dreamcast online using the Netopia method. Now what is the Netopia method, you may ask? Well, this is a method of getting your Dreamcast online that was created by Brork228 over at the Dreamcast-Talk forums. And basically what this does is it simulates a dial-up connection, and it connects to your existing high-speed home network, so you don't need to buy phone service or dial-up service in order to use this. And so you won't need a broadband adapter for your Dreamcast either, because it will connect through your standard modem. So the advantage to this over, say, using a broadband adapter would be that it supports all games, where the broadband adapter only supports Quake III Arena and Phantasy Star Online. Over a PC-DC server, the PC-DC server is basically doing the same thing, except it needs a computer running at all times, and you need to connect your Dreamcast to the computer, and you have to actually juggle between the connecting on the Dreamcast and setting up your computer to accept the connection. So it's kind of a pain in the neck. The Netopia method doesn't require you to do anything on the computer. It requires initial setup on the computer, but once you're done with that and have that set up, the computer is no longer required, and you can just connect on your Dreamcast as you would with a standard dial-up connection. Basically just click and connect, and everything else is automatic. Now there is a disadvantage to this connection, and that is with Starlancer, Maximum Pool, and 4x4 Evolution, it may require quite a few connection attempts before it will successfully connect. Especially with Maximum Pool and Starlancer, it can sometimes take up to 20 attempts before it will actually connect. Now, that won't be every time. Sometimes you'll be able to connect the first attempt, and sometimes it may take 2 or 3 times. But once you're connected, everything should work perfectly. Alright, so now on to the hardware requirements. So first off, you're going to need a Netopia R2020 or an R2121. I'm using the 2121 for this tutorial, but it really does not matter which one you use. There are slight differences between the two, but they do not matter for this tutorial. So whichever one you can find is fine. Your best bet to find these would be on eBay. They're a bit hard to find, but they do pop up every once in a while. I paid around $30 for mine. They range up to $100 or around there. I wouldn't recommend paying that because you can find them for a lot cheaper. But next off, you're going to need a telephone line simulator. The one I'm using for this tutorial is a Viking DLE200B, but you can also use several others, including ones by a company named Teltone. You can see a full list of telephone line simulators that will work with this in the link in the description below to the forum post. So next off, you're going to need a desktop computer or a laptop computer to set up the Netopia router. You'll also need a high-speed internet connection, 2 telephone line cords, and 1 RJ45 or Ethernet cable. Alright, so before we actually get into setting up the hardware and configuring it, we'll need to gather some information about your home network first. So in order to do this, you'll need a computer with Windows 7, Windows Vista, or Windows XP. You can do this with other operating systems as well, but I'll only be covering those 3 in this tutorial. So first thing you need to do is go to the Start menu and type in CMD. If you're using Windows XP, you'll need to go to Start and click Run and type in CMD and then tap Enter on the keyboard. So once you do that, you should see a window like this, which is the command line. So just type in ipconfig ipconfig space /all and tap Enter. So once you do that, you should see a bunch of information like this. So just scroll up until you see something like wireless LAN adapter, wireless network connection if you're using a wireless connection. If you're connected using a wired connection, you should see something like Ethernet adapter local area connection. But below those, you will see all the information you need. So you need to write down the following. You need to write down the subnet mask, the default gateway, and the DNS servers. You only need the top two. So once you get all that information written down, we will be all set to move on to the next step. Alright, so the next step we have to do is we have to plug in our Netopia router. So first you need to take the Ethernet cable, or a standard RJ45 cable, and plug that into the back of the Netopia router in any of the Ethernet ports. Next, take the other end of the cable and plug it into the Ethernet port on your laptop or on the back of your desktop computer. Next, take the power cable for the Netopia router, making sure the arrow is on the top, and plug it into the power port. And you should see the lights come on like so. Another thing to note is you got to make sure this button here, which says normal uplink, make sure it is not depressed. When you press it, it will go in. If you press it again, it will come back out. You want to make sure that is out. Alright, so now we're all set to configure the Netopia router. Okay, so next we need to go onto your computer and enable a service called Telnet. Now Telnet is the service that the Netopia router uses for its configuration, and if it's not enabled, you won't be able to configure it. So you need to go and enable that if you don't have it enabled already. Now this should only apply to Windows Vista and Windows 7, possibly only Windows 7, but XP should have it enabled by default. So just go into Start and then go to your Control Panel. Click on Programs and click where it says Turn Windows Features On or Off. Now you may get a prompt here asking you yes or no. Just click yes. Wait for this to load, and then go down to where it says Telnet Client and make sure it's checked. If it's not checked, click on it to check the box and click OK, and it should enable the service. So onto configuration. Okay, so now that we have Telnet enabled, we can now configure our Netopia router. So before we do that, we need to do one thing on the computer, and that is disable your wireless. If you have wireless on your laptop or your desktop computer, you will need to disable it now, or this next step will not work. So you'll need to figure out how to do that on your particular computer. So once you have that disabled, just go to Start, type in CMD, and again with Windows XP you'll need to go to Start, Run, and then CMD, and tap Enter. So once you're in the command prompt, type in telnet, T-E-L-N-E-T, and then space, and then 192.168.1.1, and tap Enter. So once you do that, you should be at the Netopia configuration screen. So just go down 3 to System Configuration, tap Enter again on IP Setup. So now you should be at the IP Setup screen. This is where you'll need that information that you wrote down earlier. So the first thing here is Ethernet IP address. This is the IP address of the Netopia router. You need to change this to a different IP address because it's most likely the same IP address as your home router, and we can't have that because that will cause a conflict and it will cause issues. So we need to change that to a different IP address, but it needs to be on the same subnet as your default home router or your default gateway. So say for example your default router is 192.168.1.1, you need to change the Netopia's IP address to 192.168.1 point something. So those first 3 numbers need to be the same. That's the subnet. And that last number can be anything that you want. So what I'm going to do is change it to 192.168.1.99. Again, that last number can be anything you like. So below that we have the subnet mask. Just put in the same number that you wrote down earlier. It may already be the same. If it is, just skip that and go down to default IP gateway. Enter the default gateway that you wrote down earlier. tap enter. Now type in the primary domain name server, or DNS server. You wrote down 2 of these earlier. The top one you want to put in the top, and the one after that put in the secondary. So type in that now. And once you have those both in, just go down and over to IP address serving. Tap enter on that. Tap enter on the top option. Go up 1 and tap enter on disabled. And then once you do that, tap escape. Escape again. Escape again, and go down to Utilities and Diagnostics. Tap enter. Go all the way down to Restart System. Tap enter on that. Go to the right to continue, and tap enter. And this will restart the router. Tap enter again. And to test your configuration, type in TELNET, telnet again, and type in 192.168.1. Whatever you put in. In my case, it's 99. Tap enter, and you should be back at the configuration. Okay, so now that we're done with the initial configuration of our Netopia router, we're now ready to hook up all our hardware. So first off, take the end of the Ethernet cable that was plugged into your computer, and take that out of your computer, and now plug it into one of the free LAN ports on your home router, and just push it in until it snaps like so. And then take one phone cable, a standard RJ11 phone cable, take one end and put it into either the Telco 1 or the Telco 2 port on your Netopia router. Doesn't matter which one you put it in, both work. Note if you're using the R2020 Netopia router, those will say line 1 and line 2. Doesn't matter what you call them, they both work the same, so just plug it into one of those ports, just like so. And then take the other end of your phone cable and plug it into line 1 on your telephone line simulator, like so. And now note, if you're using a different model telephone line simulator than I am, yours will most likely look completely different than this one. So you're just going to make sure you plug the telephone line going from the Netopia router into the line 1 on your telephone line simulator. And now take your second phone cable and plug that into line 2 on your telephone line simulator, like so. And take the other end of the phone cable and plug it into the back of your Dreamcast, just like so. Last but not least, plug in the power to your telephone line simulator. Okay, so the next step is to update the firmware on your Netopia router to the latest version. Now if you know you already have the latest version, then you can skip this step. The latest version is 4.11.3. You can see the firmware version at the top of the configuration page for the router, so you can check that. If you do not have the latest version, I'm going to show you how to download and install that now. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to 7zip.org. There's a link in the video description to this website. And then go to the home page where it says download. You can click on the top download link, which is a 32-bit version of the program. Click download and install that. I already have it installed on here, so I'm going to skip that. Just make sure you have that installed. So next you want to click on the other link in the video description, which is to the Dreamcast-Talk post with the written tutorial for this. So you want to scroll down the page until you see some red text, and right below that you'll see step number 1 where it says download and install TFTPD from here. Click on the link. So you'll be brought to this page where you'll see version 4.00 at the top here. Go to the right and go down 1 where it says TFTPD 32 Standard Edition Installer. Click on that and then click Save. You can close that out. And now go to Dreamcast-Talk again and go down to the bottom of the page, or bottom of the post, where it says attachments. Now note, if you're not registered and signed in to Dreamcast-Talk at this point, you will not see the attachments. So if you're not registered, go ahead and register and sign in, and then you will be able to see the attachments. So go down to where it says latest firmware for Netopia R2020 router, and click on the RAR file right below that, and click Save. Alright, so now you can close that out and go to your Downloads folder and double click on the installer for TFTPD32 and click Yes at the prompt. So once the installer comes up, click I agree, go Next, and click Install, and then close that out. So the next step, you're going to want to go to the desktop, right click on it, go to New, and then make a new folder, and call it TFTP, and then open that folder up, move it over to the side, and go back to your downloads, right click on the RAR file that you downloaded. Now if you installed 7-zip correctly, you should see a 7-zip menu item. Go over to that and click Open Archive, and then drag the .bin file over to that new folder that you created. So you can close out 7-zip and close out the downloads folder and move the new folder over to the side. You'll need to reference this file name later. Open up the TFTPD32 program. Should be a link on the desktop to that. Go into Settings and uncheck the box that says Enable IPv6 and click OK. It will come up with a prompt telling you need to restart the program to apply the new settings. So click OK at that and go ahead and close the program and then reopen it. And once you do that, you go to Browse and then browse to that folder that you created on the desktop and click OK. Alright, so you're all set with that program. Just move that to the side and now go back to the configuration for the router. So again, go to the Start menu, type CMD, and if you're using XP, it would be Start, Run, and then CMD, and tap Enter. And once you're at the command prompt, type in TELNET, telnet, space, and then the IP address that you assigned to the Netopia router earlier, which in my case would be 192.168.1.99. Tap Enter, and now you should be at the configuration screen. Now go down to Utilities and Diagnostics, tap Enter. Go down to Trivial File Transfer Protocol, tap Enter again. And now in the top box here, it will ask you for your TFTP server name. Now you want to reference the server interface number, which is on the TFTPD32 program. You want to type in the number that shows there, which in this case would be 192.168.1.105. Tap Enter. And then you want to put in the firmware file name, which in this case would be the NIR4113.bin file. Tap Enter again, and then tap Enter on Get Router Firmware from Server. And then go over to Continue and tap Enter again. And you should see the file transfer start on the TFTPD program. And it should say Reading Firmware on the command prompt window. So you just wait for that file transfer to complete. And once that completes, you should see a message on the command prompt saying connection to host lost. Now don't worry, that is what you're supposed to see. So just tap Enter, and then go back to the router configuration by typing in telnet 192.168.1.99 or whatever the IP address of your router is. Tap Enter again, and now you should be back at the configuration screen. Now to confirm that it installed correctly, you can take a look at the top of the command prompt, and it should say version 4.11.3. Okay, so now we're ready to configure our Netopia router for the final time. This time we're going to program it to accept an incoming connection from our Dreamcast. So again, we need to go back to the configuration page for the router, so press Start and type in CMD. Again, on XP that would be Start, Run, and then CMD, and tap Enter. And then type in Telnet, space, and then the IP address that you assigned to your Netopia router. Tap Enter. And now we need to go down to WAN configuration. Tap Enter on that. Go down to Add Connection Profile. Tap Enter. Alright, so now we need to assign a name to this profile. I'm just going to put in Dreamcast. You can put anything you want here. Profile enabled needs to be yes. Encapsulation type needs to be PPP. And now go to Encapsulation Options. Tap Enter on that. And we want to change data compression. Tap Enter and go up to None and tap Enter on that. Send authentication should be PAP. Leave the top username and password blank and type in Dream for the receive username. Tap Enter. Type in Dreamcast for the receive password. Tap Enter. It'll ask you to confirm that password, so type in Dreamcast again. Tap Enter. Now keep in mind you can put anything you want for the receive username and receive password, but I'm just putting those because they're easy to remember. So for channel usage, you want to leave that at dynamic. Dial on demand should be yes. Tap Enter on bandwidth allocation and go up to auto and tap Enter. So we're all set in there, so press escape to go back. And now we want to go to IP profile parameters. Tap Enter on that. And you want to change address translation enabled to no. Press Tab on your keyboard to change that, and then tap Enter to confirm it. And go down to negotiate LAN IP address / mask. That should be no. IP addressing should be unnumbered. Remote IP address. This is your Dreamcast's IP address, so you can assign it whatever IP address you want, as long as it's on the same subnet as your main router. So it should be 192.168.1. Whatever you want there, as long as it's not 1, which would be most likely the same IP address as your main router. So I'm going to put 98 right there. So tap Enter on that. The remote IP mask should be 255.255.255.255. Tap Enter. And then go down to Remove Filter Set. Tap Enter on that. And then I believe we're all set there. So you can back out of there. And go now to Telco Options and tap Enter on that. So for dial, you want to tap Enter and change that to dial in only and tap Enter on that. You want to leave dialing prefix, number to dial, and alternate site to dial as blank. Idle timeout, change that to 0 and tap Enter. CNA validation number should be blank. And CompuServe login enabled should be no. And tap Escape. And now we can go down to Commit, tap Enter on that. And there we go. We are all set to go, except now we just need to restart the router. So just go back to the main page and go down to Utilities and Diagnostics. Tap Enter on that and go all the way down to Restart System. Tap Enter, over to Continue, and tap Enter again. And we are all set. So that is the final configuration for our Netopia router. Okay, so now we're finally ready to configure our Dreamcast and test the connection. So in order to do this, you will need a Dreamcast web browser. I forgot to mention this in the initial intro to the video, but yes, you will need a web browser. Depending on your region, you'll need either Planet Web, DreamKey, or Dream Passport, but if you're in the US, it will be Planet Web. You can also use the custom web browser called XDP. You can find that if you Google it. You can download and burn that if you do not have a web browser. But for this example, I'll be using Planet Web 2.6. Any version should do. So first you're going to need to press Start on your controller, and go down and over to Options. Wait for that to load up and click on Internet Connection. Alright, so for the top option here, your real name, you can leave it blank. For user login, you're going to want to put in the username that you inputted into the Netopia in the last step, which in my case would be Dream. And then for the password, you're going to want to put Dreamcast or whatever you put in to the Netopia in the last step. For dial-up number, this will depend on your telephone line simulator. For my particular model, this number does not matter, so you can put any number you want in here. But if you're using a different model telephone line simulator, specifically from the Teltone series of telephone line simulators, you'll need to put a specific number in here, because each line on those telephone line simulators has a specific number in order to dial it. So for example, if you're using a Teltone TLS3, you'll want to put in number 40 in order to dial port or line number 1. But for my case, I'm going to just put in 1 because it doesn't matter. But as I said, if you do need to dial a specific number, you can check the documentation for your specific telephone line simulator and see what that number should be. Okay, so backup number you can leave blank. DNS 1 and 2, just put in zeros and click OK. And leave all these boxes up here, the top 4 boxes, leave those blank. Modem init should be AT and F0. That's the default, so unless you've changed it, that should already be in there. Dial should be tone. Dial area code should be off. Blind dial should also be off. And click OK. And proxy should be no, and leave those 2 blank, and click OK again. And now click Save. And now that we have all our settings in there, we are ready to test the connection. So all you have to do is go up here to Connect. Just tap A on your controller to connect. And if all goes well, and right after the telephone line simulator dials, you should start to hear your Netopia router make that classic dial-up sound. And there it is. So once it gets through dialing, you should see a message come up, if everything goes correctly, that the modem has connected, which you can see right there. So after that, it's just going to try and load a defunct page from the Sega.com site. So obviously it didn't find the page, so it just reverted back to the Sega homepage. But if you see this page, you are now connected to the World Wide Web with your Sega Dreamcast. So not only does the web browser work, any game that you try, including Starlancer, Maximum Pool, 4x4 Evolution, Phantasy Star Online, and Quake III Arena should all connect. Now, as I noted at the beginning of the video, with Starlancer, 4x4 Evolution, and Maximum Pool, it may take a few attempts to connect, but once you're connected, everything should work perfectly. Okay, so now we have one more step to do, and that is to set up port forwarding for our Dreamcast. Now this step is optional, but I highly recommend you do it, because if you don't, you may have problems seeing or joining games when playing online, particularly with Starlancer, so I definitely recommend you do this. Now, the first thing you need to do is go onto your computer and open up a web browser. That can be Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Opera, whatever you want to use. And go to the address bar and type in the default gateway that you wrote down in step 1. This will be the IP address of your home router. In my case, it would be 192.168.1.1. Tap enter and you should be brought to a page similar to this. It will probably ask you for a username and password. So you'll want to figure out what the username and password for your router is. If you've changed it, you most likely know what it is already. But if it's still at the default, For a Linksys router, it would be admin admin, say admin for the username and admin for the password. That's ADMIN. But if you're using a different brand router, you may want to consult your manual, or you can also Google it to figure out what the default password and username is. But once you put that in, you'll be brought to this setup page. If you're using a Linksys router, it will look identical to this. What you want to look for is port range forwarding. If you're not using a Linksys router, you'll need to find it yourself. But if you are using a Linksys router, it should be under Applications and Gaming, and then under Port Range Forwarding. And once you click on that, you'll see something similar to this with a bunch of rows where you can input port forwarding for multiple devices. In our case, we just want to input port forwarding for our Dreamcast. So just type in a name for one of them, in this case just Dreamcast, and type in a start port, which would be 1, and an end port, which would be 65,535. Change the protocol to both. It should be TCP and UDP, so just click both. And then you want to input the IP address for your Dreamcast. This is the same IP address that you assigned your Dreamcast in step 5. And make sure that's enabled. Click on the checkbox and click Save. Congratulations on becoming one of the elite few to have an online Dreamcast. I want to give a big shout out to Brork228 over at the Dreamcast-Talk forums. He's the one that came up with this whole setup. Without him, none of this would be possible. So big thanks to him. And if you have any problems with this setup, I encourage you to go to the link in the video description to the Dreamcast-Talk post, and post there if you have any questions or are having any issues. There are a bunch of people over there that would be willing to help you, and there's also some troubleshooting steps on the original post that you can check out as well. Well, I hope this video has helped a lot of you out, and I hope to see you guys online for some online Dreamcasting.